Contenders, ready! Gladiators, ready! 3, 2, 1, the Gladiators!
Hello and welcome to another instalment of the Glad Pod in association with Gladiators TV. I'm David Blackmore, and joining me once more on this epic gladiatorial journey of discovery is Jet and producer Paul. Thank you so much to everyone who continues to send in their glad stories. It's so great to read them, and all of us just love reading these stories. The thing is that I'm discovering is there are similarities now, like people eating their dinner whilst watching the show. I can never remember doing that. Maybe my dinner was earlier, maybe it was later, I don't know. Can you ever remember eating dinner whilst watching Gladiators? Or do you think you'd just been probably too excited to have eaten anything? You were just like in the Gladiator zone.
Eating dinner while watching Gladiators was definitely not a thing for me either. I think I must have eaten either before or after, but yeah, probably the excitement. If I was eating at the time, it probably would have literally ended up all over the place with me kind of screaming at the TV. So yeah, no, eating dinner whilst watching Gladiators was not something I did. I was kind of one of those ones that was arms and legs folded literally like so far in front of the TV just watching it.
Yeah, no, I can't remember that. But diving into the mailbag this week, and I found this really lovely letter from Jake. He says how growing up he had a very difficult relationship with food and developed a eating disorder, but Gladiators played such a big part in developing his mindset, as he had these kind of superheroes to look up to with such body confidence. And he goes on to say how he will always be grateful for you, Di. And I do agree with him when he says that you're very humble in these podcasts, and that actually he would just like to repeat, as others have, that you really were such an iconic figure of Saturday night. But this was the bit that really touched me, and I'll just read like verbatim kind of what he wrote. In the same way, I'm sure you heard you were the lot of boys' first crush. Your gracefulness and femininity inspired me to be able to accept who I was as a young gay boy, and I will be forever grateful. Di, that must be so lovely to hear.
Wow, just trying to kind of download that. Thank you, Jake. Thank you so much. What can you say to that? What can you say to that? I'm trying to just kind of do a tiny bit of the empathic response of standing in the shoes of another and going back in time and what it would have been like for, you see, one of my best friends, Day, was a huge Glad fan. I'm sure you won't mind me mentioning him, Tony Foxton. He grew up at a time again whereby in certain parts of the country, if you're coming out or not being accepted, it would have made it a lot harder to internally self-accept how you're growing and where you're steer and where your focus is in terms of sexuality and outlook in life. But then to have somebody who can kind of loosen that or do something that you're watching, say, on TV or a pop star or something, and just think, do you know what, I'm okay with this. And if society's okay with it, I don't care anymore. This is what I am. So thank you, Jake, that you looked at me and that I became part of your self-acceptance, and I'm sure then it would have been a lot easier for not only your friends and family but everybody else you've gone on to know and love and do life with. Because of that, I feel very honoured. Thank you.
The reason why I wanted to divide the first bit from the second bit is the second bit the first bit really touched me, as I'm sure it did for you as well, Di, but the second bit also made me laugh out loud because he then goes on to talk about seeing you on Duel for the first time. So he's gone from seeing you as being this gracious and agile on other events, swinging effortlessly from one on Hang Tough, to seeing you on Duel and suddenly flipping the switch and, in his words, turning up the aggression and showing a completely different side of you, which just shows how we can all, in different circumstances, essentially put on a different face. And it made me laugh out loud because when I think of you, Di, I don't necessarily think of aggression, but on Duel, you had to be.
Absolutely. I had to kind of dig very deep for that switch and get the raw, get the fight of the gladiator out in me. I think it was called terror. I think it's being 20 foot up on a podium with these sticks which, like lightning, you could barely get your hands around, faced by another female, probably bigger than me because most of them were. And I've got to hit them off the podium. And so I just thought, I just got to do crazy. Just keep moving, and don't stop until she's off or I threw myself off. But thank you for that, though. Thank you for the memory. I think I only ever did it twice because I had an issue with my back. So my disc had gone in the early 1990s from other sports sport and dance and teaching and things, so the disc was very worn. So I had really bad sciatica for the first year to 2 years of doing the show. So anything that meant me kind of putting force through my upper body with what I call a forward hinge, so any sort of forward bend from the hip, literally my left leg would give away. So I was very terrified about the pain. I was terrified about being unstable. So thankfully, because I was better at things like the wall and hang tough, which kept my spine in a neutral shape, I was put on them. So I was very rarely thrown at Jill because the other girls were so much better than me.
Although saying that, Di, you did play it 4 times and you had 2 wins and 2 draws. So you actually never lost. So you give yourself some credit there.
Thank you. I can only remember 2. I remember the pain. I remember thinking, please don't let me fall because my leg gives away. But the producers behind Gladiators really did try to help me to get the disc, get an epidural, get an injection into the spine, which coated the disc. So stop the kind of sciatic infringement, which was really disabling.
Well, sticking with Jewel, Jake would really love us to track down Rio, who he has proclaimed as the undisputed queen of Jewel. He says that he's noticed that she's gone underground somewhat slightly. She, in his eyes, was behind Jet as the most stunning, the biggest and strongest female gladiator as well. And what I also like about Jake is that he kind of ends his letter in talking about how he wants to hear more about the backstage mechanics of the show, which is something that Di, you and I are really fascinated by as well, because yes, you can speak to them, the gladiators, about the events they liked and all that, but also there's the backstage things that perhaps people don't realise, and I think that for me is just as fascinating as the actual what you see on screen as well.
Paul, I sent you a picture, didn't I, of I think sat with Wolf and Simon Lithgow, Nigel's eldest. So there's this little pen at the back of the whole of the set, and it sort of had a few bits of screen around us, and we had a monitor back there so we could see what was going on in the arena during filming. And it was it wasn't a nice place to sit. I sent Paul recently an exclusive picture. I don't know if you're going to do anything with it. Yeah, it's just very, very tense place to be backstage, everybody. Not my most favourite place. And then you could go kind of like into the back rooms, because all the way around the arena, of course, you've got all the dressing rooms. And I don't know if anybody knows this, but actually under the arena, like a proper gladiatorial arena, there was an underground, which apparently in the olden days the gladiators would be in. So when you see the film Gladiator and they're under the actual arena itself, the NIA, Barclaycard Arena, I think it's called now, is also the same. So they rigged up all the events underground before the events were rigged up in the arena as well. Little kind of makeshifty things for us to start practicing on. So if you weren't in the pig pen, you'd have either been in the corridor in a dressing room somewhere or allowed to go underneath. It was just, it's just huge, absolutely huge, but very tense, because if we were sat backstage, it obviously meant we'd be competing at some point during that day. And it's very bizarre. I think they did some blood tests on the girls in the first year or two, and our white blood cell count, which usually indicates stress, I'm no technician with this, was through the roof because of the stress. So you basically, if anyone's an athlete or if anybody does anything that's quite kind of public and you're literally getting 30 seconds or a minute to prove yourself, your adrenaline, you can go into what we call a peak performance state. And it was managing your nerves, because I don't know if anybody is like this, and I can get it now. I actually physically shake if I'm really nervous, and that's adrenaline just pumping through your body. And if there's one place you didn't want to be shaking very much, was when you're out there in the arena, because you needed to be really kind of focused, body stable and primed for that peak performance. Hopefully you're going to dig into it in that 30-second period or that minute period. And it's I think a lot of champions, I think Jennifer and all the athletes that ever joined us will know what that little bit's like. And I think you train to know what it feels like and where it is on your stress curve, and you can access it very quickly. But I think if you don't, you just end up like a shaking, gibbering wreck. So I think the backstage, it just kind of, it reeked for me of that kind of palpable, nervous adrenaline that everybody was living on. And I don't think that was just gladiators, definitely contenders, and even the crew and the riggers, because, they all had jobs that they had to do and it had to be right. Yeah. Oh, I even go shivery just thinking about it still.
Do you feel for you that you would go into autopilot going out on some of the events?
No. I think every time I went out, it was kind of there was a program in there in me somewhere that knew how to go from ring to ring or double ring on, say, hang tough or the left-hand side of the wall. It was already in there, but there was never a part of me would kind of take for granted that preparedness, if that makes sense, because the adrenaline would be at such a state and such a peak. If I didn't manage that, I just don't think I'd have been able to get through as easily as I did. And none of it was easy, because once that whistle went, you never really fully knew what was going to happen, because it's who you were paired up with, of course, in terms of the contender and the contenders, and they just got better, faster, sharper every year. Premeditation a little bit, because you knew your event to a degree, probably better than a contender, but to be honest, no, whenever I went out there, it would be pretty organic and pretty much anything could happen once that whistle had gone.
Don't forget, you can send your stories, your Glad stories, by emailing gladpod@gladiatorstv.com. You can also share your pictures and anything else you have Glad related on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. Let's get into this week's pod.
3, 2, 1.
Today on our Glad Pod, we are joined by Kerryn Chamberlin. Now, to ardent Gladiator fans, you'd know her as Kerryn Sampey. Of course, the 1994 Series 3 runner-up, the nemesis of Eunice Urquhart. And she's joining us now to tell us all about how it started. Welcome to you. You're looking great.
Thank you, Diane. That's good. And you too. Goodness. You know, and bearing in mind how, you know, when you think about how long ago it was, it's just amazing. I couldn't get my head around it. And actually, when I worked that out, that becomes quite scary.
It certainly does. But let's go back, because that's where it's always very exciting to hear about how it all started for you.
It started when I was at university. I was really young. I think I'd just done my first year at university. You know, we were watching it on telly in our student accommodation. And my boyfriend actually at the time applied both for me and him, but didn't tell me. So he applied on my behalf, and I knew nothing about it until I got a letter through the door saying that you have been selected to go to Manchester for a trial. So it was all very kind of, oh, okay then. Well, yeah, why not? So we both toddled off to Manchester and did the trial at some sports centre somewhere in Manchester, and I was at University of Leeds.
So what was going through your head, though, at that stage? Because obviously you'd seen the show by that stage. You knew what it was all about, or what you potentially were letting yourself in for.
Yeah, well, I didn't really think about it, if I'm honest with you. I was training as a gymnast through sports science at university. My background was in gymnastics. I was doing a lot of gymnastics and still training at university. So I didn't prepare for it at all. I had no preconceived ideas whatsoever. And I kind of just went along with it. And I thought, oh, this will be good for a laugh sort of thing. Just not taking it seriously at all. Kind of snowballed. And genuinely, every single thing that I was going through, I was kind of a bit, I don't know what's going on, but let's just go with it. So yeah, it was all very, very weird, very, very surreal. And I think because I had no expectations whatsoever, everything was a bit of a bonus, really, and I was quite relaxed about it.
But it sounds like you were a bit of a fan of the show anyway.
Well, I think it was just, you know, you're a student, it was staple viewing, Saturday night, your blind date, Gladiators, that's just what you watched. And of course, you know, the show was just this surreal fantasy, probably, really, and the way that it was staged and how enormous it was, quite hard to comprehend that actually forms a phase of your life. You know, I kind of think myself as being quite normal. You know, there's nothing special about me. And I think really being a gymnast, I just love to jump over things and swing on things. And you know, that was me playing. And the two sort of came together quite naturally.
Welcome, Kerryn. Just a little bit of home support there, I feel. Tell us what you do and where you're from.
I'm a student at Carnegie College. Studying sport and exercise science.
Now, I hear a lot of people are taking this on. What does that involve? Playing football all day or what?
Oh, there's a bit of that, quite a bit of practical work and a bit of using the brain as well.
Oh, that's good to hear. And what do you hope that will lead on to?
Well, I think I'm going to end up being a PE teacher.
Oh, goodness me. I hope you like children.
Yeah, just one.
Well, listen, you looking forward to tonight?
Yeah, looking forward to it so much.
Well, I'll let you go and prepare for your very first event. Ladies and gentlemen, Kerryn Sampey.
what can you remember about the tryout? You know, how tough did you find it? Did you find it easy? What were your memories of it?
I think I found it quite easy. I know some people the treadmill, I just knew I had to go at a certain speed and keep running, and that was fine. You know, there were some people there who were brilliantly strong and amazing, but had never been on a treadmill before in their lives. So they were pinging off the back because they didn't know how to run on a treadmill. So it was, quite strange. I remember doing long arm chin-ups, which, as a gymnast, that's what you do. And you climb up and down ropes. It's what you do. And I remember doing long arm chin-ups, and you had to wait between each one. You had to pause and hang for a bit. And I remember Kenny Warwick coming round, and I was just having a conversation with him whilst doing these long arm chin-ups because, and we were just chatting. And it was great. But I do remember at the end, once you'd done all those things, at the end, you had to wait for people to come through. So if you got through that bit, and then you had to do like a pugil fight on the floor in this area. And the next person coming through was this lady, and she was probably as tall as she was wide. And she was a real bodybuilder type person. She was huge. I've never been hit before in the head, with a pugil stick. And it was just like, oh my goodness. What's happening here? Well, it ended up that I just went, my fight or flight just kicked in. I thought, well, I've got nowhere to run, which would be my normal response. So I just went went just a little bit ballistic with this pugil stick. It's just getting through each bit and going, right, well, it's now or never here. And you something kicks in and you just go, right.
You said that, Kenny, you had a cash conversation while doing your chins. And yes, as gymnasts, that is just our normal conditioning to even do the tryouts to some degree. But when was the penny actually dropping that, wait a minute, that you've made some sort of rapport with one of the big producers, as you now know. But did it dawn on you at all during your tryout that, wait a minute, this is real. I'm really with a chance here.
No, genuinely, I didn't even clock it. I was so naive. I had no understanding of the TV world and media and all the trappings that it brings at all. I was so naive. That probably played into my hands because I didn't worry about it. Nothing was, phasing me at all because it was oblivious to everything. And it was only until, well, not even on the shows. I mean, I did a live show at Wembley, which was the next bit to get through. I did a live show at Wembley and I just found it bizarre. And I just embraced it, I think, without thinking, well, what's the worst that can happen here?
Well, that's what I was going to go on to, actually, because I didn't realise that you did a trial at one of the Gladiators live events at Wembley. Did you win that show?
Yeah.
Oh, right. Well, there you go then. But the thing is because it's obviously a bit later on, they probably have got that opportunity to put some of the contenders through their paces to see how they're going to actually fare on the actual series itself. But presumably it also gave you an advantage because if someone coming in 1992 wouldn't have known what was coming up, at least you'd seen the events on telly and then you'd experienced some of them in a live setting as well.
The thing with it is there's such variety going on there. What you can't be as a real specialist. So you can't be amazing at duel and think that you're going to win it. I think what played into my hands is that I could do the eliminator really, really fast. So it didn't matter. And what was always very often the case, that I started behind. So I might have got mullered in all of the games, but beaten to a pulp in all the real combat ones. Yet on the eliminator, I knew even if I was 12 seconds behind, I'd probably catch them up. That's how it played out, really. So it played into my hands.
And then the nickname, the Smiler. Where does that originate from?
I had no idea that was my nickname.
Well, it was apparently because you were so happy and always smiling, even if you lost, so jovial. Do you know how many points you picked up on Powerball, by the way?
No, I quite enjoyed that one, though. I think that was one of my favourite games. Got no idea.
Well, not that I know the exact number overall, but you did pick up 13 points in the quarterfinals, which, that is staggering, really, for Powerball.
Yeah, and I also played a lot of netball as well. I was quick. I had a good turn of speed, and that, when you asked, you sort of ones that I enjoyed, it was Powerball.
They're scoring at will out there, and the Gladiators just don't seem to know what's hit them. They're in total disarray. There's the whistle, and only the Gladiators will be relieved to hear it in that record-scoring game for the girls.
Kerry, a lot of agility there. You're small, you're very quick on your feet.
Yeah, I tried to get past them. They got me a couple of times, got a bit of an injury. But they did so well. And I just tried to skip around them, and a lot of times it worked.
Well, you certainly did. You got 13 points! Well done. Oh, Glads, That's a particularly high score for the contenders.
They were both amazing contenders, and we have no excuses. They performed better than we did. Congratulations.
But it depends who you're against. So it depends on the team of gladiators who are in there as well. So, sometimes you could pick off some gladiators and go, I'm going to be all right, I'm going to be able to get around them. And some of them you just go, no, this...
Reveal any of the hints of who those gladiators may have been.
In Powerball, when you see the lineup backstage, there's just a piece of paper put up as to who you're against, and you won't find that the minute that you walk in to film that show. So you don't know how to prepare for it. If we had Lightning, Jet and Nightshade, but Vogue was in there as well. So if you had any of those fours or a combination, but you knew you were going to get hit really hard and they came flying at you, particularly Jet and Lightning, I have to say, they literally feet off the floor and they would just come totally flying at you and take you down. And they were just as fast. And that was the thing. It was the speed that they could match. So, yeah.
I've got to say at this point, it was contenders like you and Eunice that actually really upped our game on Powerball. We knew then we'd met our matches because the power to ratio, strength to speed to power ratio, this is a sports scientist, you start kind of, because I work things out, you think, okay, this is a very even match, and both you and Eunice facing you two out there, we had to work so much harder as a team and get our tactics really sharp, because you're not going to get the time with you two out there to actually see you upped our game.
I suppose the speed events, absolutely. I think that's where the contenders did come into their own, where you knew that if you also were quite quick and agile and had good balance, there were certain games that absolutely played into your favour. More the technical ones, though, I would say things like the wall and hang tough, definitely for me. Really difficult, because even though I'm a gymnast and I'm used to hanging and swinging, there was a real technique to it. And you'd have to sort of figure that out pretty quick because you didn't get a lot of time to practice and work it out.
This is Kerryn's first excursion up the wall. Gladiators are up and at them. Contenders only get a 7-second head start in the semis. Kerryn climbing well. And what is Jet up to? You're meant to take them off the wall, not overtake them. Oh, Kerryn loses a grasp on a hand grip. Jet moving across. And a flying tackle from Jet strips her from the wall.
If it was just running in a straight line, etc., or over assault courses, that was my bag. And then obviously there was the ones that were the hitting ones and the contact ones, which were probably less of my favourite ones.
But you did defeat Zodiac on duel, mainly because Zodiac had to lean over to try and hit you. But at least you did it.
Yeah, and I think that was just balance and you just have to dig in. And sometimes it's not even tactical, it's just
survival.
Determination to go, right, I'm not coming off this. And, it doesn't matter how many times you're getting beaten over the head. So, yeah, some of them were tactical, some of them you could work them out, some of them were just speed and agility. And I knew that I kind of had that, less so on the others. But likewise, and I'll probably jump into an example in the Ashes, when I did a suspension bridge. And so I had suspension bridge and I was against a gladiator called Storm from Australia. And she's like big, I think she's massive. She's judo or karate or something like that was her background. So that fighting thing, you've got this big hammer thing in your hand that's just massive and just no use nor ornament really to actually do any damage. It's just like a ramming rod, but you're not allowed to ram them. You're not allowed to push them. So I remember having a conversation with Andrew Norgate before that and going, so tell me, in terms of the rules, is the rules of the game to get to the other side? Yes, that's right. So it doesn't matter about knocking them off. I just have to get to the other side. Yes. Okay. Right. Great. So then I'd worked out if I let her swing at me, I duck. This was my tactic. I duck. And then I just leg it past her. I drop this hammer thing, drop it, and then run past her. That was my tactic. Bizarrely, it worked.
Next up on suspension bridge, we have Kerryn from the UK, and she's up against the tremendous Storm.
This is the Storm Kerryn has to weather. She's shorter than the British contender and only 1 kilo heavier. No Storm in a teacup, this one. The The storm blows in from the east. Kerryn squares up to her. Oh, and gets caught with a good hook from Storm. Kerryn's lost it. No, she hasn't. She's pushed her over and nipped in the back way. Incredible victory for Kerryn. 10 points, and isn't she pleased? And aren't they wrong?
Well, Kerryn, congratulations. That's one Storm that blew over very quickly.
Yeah, I knew she's a big girl and I knew I wasn't going to be able to hit her. I thought I'd use my cunning and just get past her. That's the name of the game. Get to the other side.
Do you know how many points you got?
Hopefully 10.
You got yourself 10 points. Well done, Kerryn. Storm. Obviously one of the favourites here. What happened?
Well, you know, I generally like someone to stand and fight, but if you want to run, you want to run, and I guess there's going to be no rematch because I'm going to go and have some dinner.
So there were things where you could go, look, this isn't my forte. If I get bashed around the head, I'm off. So you kind of had to think about how you were going to do it.
But then it seemed like you always had tactics on Pyramid as well, because you were one of the few girls to make it to the top. But did you always try and drag the Gladiators down with you as well?
Yeah, I'd worked out how to do that one. And I used the tactic every single time. And I remember again in Australia, I was against this gladiator called Cheetah, who was the queen of the pyramid. And I was going, okay, right. And my tactic was you run up to them, grab them, you roll down, and then it's the first one to push off and get up the mat, and you just leg it up in a straight line. And therefore it was just speed versus speed. And if you could get up first and start running, you had half a chance, but you only had one chance because your legs were it's exhausting running up that thing. You know, the steps are really, really huge and a bit squishy as well. So it's like running up sand dunes and things like if you've ever done that, it's exhausting. So you had one shot, you had to do it in one go because you didn't have enough energy to do it again.
Pyramid looking like airs rock to the contenders. The Gladiators come down to play. Bogue on Kerry. Oh, and Cheetah rolls the British challenger Kerryn to the floor. And Kerryn slipped through Bogue. She's heading for the summit. Bogue struggling to recover. Can she get to her? Yes. Oh, Kerryn's free. She's outrun the Cheetah. 10 points to Great Britain and Karen Sampey. Stole the points right from under the Aussies' nose. Well, in the replay, the victorious Karen Sampey from Great Britain left Cheetah lying on the deck and out-sprinted her up the stairs to pick up the maximum. Good start for her. Here's Kimberly.
Kerryn, what a start to the Battle of the Ashes. 10 points.
Yeah, I'm really pleased about that. I thought if I don't get at the top the first time, I'll be too tired and I'll not be able to do it.
When producer Paul said we were speaking with you, that the one abiding memory that I had when I thought back was just the amount of flips that you used to do. I mean, you must have rivaled Jet and Lightning for the amount of flips you used to do. What was the thinking behind that? Were you inspired by Jet and Lightning to do the flips, or was it just a way of you getting yourself prepared?
I think I was encouraged to do them. I think I would much rather do flips than speak on camera, if I'm perfectly honest. So it's probably a tactical of it. Well, if they can't interview me and ask me to speak when I'm exhausted, I mean, goodness, my voice isn't a media voice, is it? And I had this squeaky voice, probably still do. So do you know what? To probably escape that, I'll just do a few flips. They can't interview me while I'm doing flips and brownies and stuff like that.
We loved to see that. We thought, oh, wow. And again, just a mark of we've got competition. Because anybody, I mean, it's a gymnast's dream, the gladiatorial arena. It is playtime for us, isn't it? Because that's literally how we trained as children. And we're just carrying it on. And it's a chance to kind of really showcase that. So you brought everything to the table as a contender for us. And I remember thinking with Kim Lightning Eye, thinking, oh yeah, we've got our work cut out. What's it like to hear that now?
I think that's great, and that's the element of humanising the gladiators, because they were this mystical, amazing and beautiful people that actually just being in my opinion, just a normal person could give that a bit of a challenge. So, I think and I'm a firm believer of, goodness, anyone can do anything. If you just give it a go, just give it a shot. Yeah, I'd like to think that you have that aspiration, that you, just because you might be something or perceived as something, amazing or out of reach, that actually anyone, if you work hard enough and you give it a good go, you can be a bit of competition there.
It was you that actually inspired people more than us, because people saw someone like you doing it, thinking it's doable. These people are beatable.
Yeah, absolutely. Of course it is. Yeah. I think you're just limited by your own limitations, really. Anyone, give it a shot, give it a go. You never know. And exactly what happened to me. At the end of every single show coming through the eliminator, whether it was the live show or whatever, I was just amazed and kind of going, well, that was quite good. But gosh, just bemused really as to what's going on by the whole thing. So whereas I suppose there were some other contenders that had, they trained all their life, but that's how they portrayed it. This is my dream. I've trained all my life for it. And then when maybe it didn't go quite to plan, that was the end of their world, and they were really, really disappointed, and this was their dream. Whereas, if I'm honest, I that probably didn't. It wasn't the same for me. I just kind of went with the flow.
Yeah, no, I get that. I get it's kind of, as you say, for many, per se, athletes, it would be there like the Olympics, and I guess gymnasts to a degree as well. The one thing I found strange is that Hang Tough just really wasn't a particular favourite of yours, but for other gymnasts, it was a favourite event, because although, as we've discovered on GladPod, despite the fact you probably thought Jet was amazing at it, she didn't start off very well on Hang Tough, so she had to put in the hours and the practice for that. What was it about it that you didn't like it? Was it having to put your hands through it? Was it that element to it?
No, it was just the technique, I think, and I just didn't have enough time to work out the technique physically on the equipment, and I could have got there, but I just didn't. And let's be honest, that the parameters of the game is, you can only go so many rings that way or that way, and if you can traverse, then that's great. But the fact is that when you've got Jet and particularly Lightning coming at you, who can just move. So it was like it was like a spider in their own web, and they will get you. And there's no way that they won't, because there wasn't enough options to go out wider. It was only so big. So if you were being chased down, it's a lot harder to be the chasee or the prey than it is being probably the one to capture. And gosh, Lightning and Jet just had nailed that, how you do that. I'd say Vogue as well. What was really interesting when we went to Australia to do the Ashes, the rig and how the rings were set up were different. All the British guys, including the Gladiators and Jet, you will remember this. They were set at a different position. So the technique to do it, when we watched the Australians on it, they were like going around in these funny little circles. I'm pretty sure that Jet and Lightning at the time were just going, oh my goodness, we've got to, it's going to be a real challenge for us as a gladiator to get the Australian contenders on it.
Yeah, no, I do remember it being odd. I just thought, this is odd. It doesn't feel quite the same. But I think I bullishly kind of because again, it's really interesting because the contenders always got less time because we'd become familiar over the years with the events. It was one of those rare occasions when us as Glads literally had to familiarise ourselves with what looked similar but was also very different. And it for a moment, for me, it put me more in the shoes of you guys about how with limited exposure to an event, you really are literally on the back foot or the back ring, so to speak.
The blade doesn't look dull. She aims to cut Kerryn out of the points. Kerryn comes from a gymnastic background, but Hang Tough not one of her favourites. Blade marking the scoring zone, but Kerryn looking as if she's aiming straight for the Gladiator. Yep, missed that time. Oh, Blade's got her! And Kerry's not in the scoring zone. She's defending with her legs, and Blade trying to knock Kerryn's legs up like a girl guide. Kerryn needs to escape the Gladiators' clutches and get in the scoring zone if she's to pull any points. Hanging Tough well at the moment. And Blade manoeuvring herself to get her weight. Yes, there she is. She brings the full weight to bear, cuts her down with ease. Good performance from Blade. It can't be easy for the Aussie Glads wearing those tinfoil costumes.
I'm so looking forward to speak to you about the Eliminator and that final of Series 3. But I just wanted to ask you first. So obviously you beat Jane Ludden in the heat, then Melissa Spackman in the quarters and Nikki Wyatt in the semi. What were they like as competitors for you?
What's funny, of course, it's a TV show, so you want to put a little bit of controversy in there potentially. And I do remember, and I didn't know this until I watched the show, that Jane, she was ahead of me, but she had an interview to camera, like the separate interviews that you do to camera beforehand. And I remember her saying, and I only knew this afterwards, Kerryn, she's a really lovely girl, but on the Eliminator, she's got no chance. I didn't know that she said that. In which case, I kind of just steamed past her just because of my strength to weight ratio. And the eliminator is completely all of that. You know, a balance beam, no problem. A monkey bars, a rope climb, or, you know, climbing up a cargo net, no problem at all. I used to do backflips on a beam, so running across one's it's not going to be a problem. The travelator, though, was always the one thing that got people, and there was a bit of technique on there. Now, you might know more than me, but obviously you can control the speed of the travelator. I'm not casting any aspersions here. I just wonder whether there was some speed things going on to make it more interesting. And I genuinely say, you know, because your legs, by the time you got to there, were absolutely fine, because you barely used in the eliminator, so your legs weren't tired at all. But I'm pretty sure that I went up that travelator. Sometimes it was really easy, and sometimes it was, there's no way you were going to go at the top, and you only realise that when you're halfway up that travelator.
Well, what I would say was that I definitely know that the travelators could be set at different speeds, but I think that if they were amended on both of the travelators, so it was still fair. It wasn't like one contender had it faster than the other, which I think is the most important thing to kind of still make it fair. But whether they upped it as the competition went on, probably, I would say.
Well, it would speak volumes for that final eliminator between you and Eunice, because 7 seconds was was for a final as well, for two people such as yourself. That was a long time to catch up with as well. Just and for those listening to this podcast, I would advise you probably at this point, pause it, watch that final eliminator, and then come back to listen to the rest of it, because it has to be it's the most epic eliminator in the history of Gladiators.
As Kerryn comes down the zip line, Eunice is on the balance beam. Clears that. Up the travelator. Oh no! Slipped, and here comes Kerryn. It's head to head. Oh, goes down again, and Kerryn fingertips loses it. This is incredible. What a final! This is what you need to be champion of Gladiators. Speed, strength, and an awful lot of determination. Eunice Huttard from Liverpool, 1994 Gladiator champion. And look at that collapse with excitement.
Eunice was 14 points ahead, half of a second for each point, so she was 7 seconds start. At that point, were you thinking, this is going to be tough for me to get this back? Or did you still genuinely think, if I go all guns blazing here, I've got a really good chance of catching her up?
Yeah, I never even entered my head that I couldn't catch her. Although it wasn't a thought that entered my mind at all. Anything could have happened. She could have fallen off the beam. She could have, done anything. So to think that before you do it didn't even enter my head, because anything could have happened. What I expected to do was come down on the travelator, and that was more of a surprise. And I saw her coming down as I was going along the beam. So, and then I went, and I've never not got up that travelator. So, which suggests that actually, oh gosh, this is going a bit faster than I thought here, as I was halfway up it. And what I do remember though is that all of the other contenders from the shows had come back to watch the live final, and they were in the audience on our right hand side. And as I was, on my stomach coming down the travelator, I looked at the side and I could see them all. And they absolutely blasted me afterwards, going, "Kerryn, what were you doing? You were coming down that travelator on your stomach, still smiling, and you clearly just lost it." And I was going, "Was I? Oh, well."
And you were so close, and yet at the end, even after you see Eunice going through at the end, you still had time to do a flip, and you waved to the crowd before you went through.
Kerryn finally makes it to the top. Flick-flack and a sweep through the paper burst to be runner-up 1994. Thank you, girls, for a great competition.
Unlucky, but still congratulations. You battled through from over 25,000 people and you came second. That's still amazing.
Yeah, I'm very happy. I couldn't have lost to a better person. Congratulations to Eunice.
Were you disappointed not to have won that?
No, because I wasn't actually. I was really pleased for Eunice. I wasn't disappointed at all. I thought the whole, just being a part of it and doing what I did, I just thought it was great. And because I hadn't set myself massive expectations, I didn't genuinely feel any sort of, that it was I was like, yes, I came second. Some people could say, "Oh, you lost," and well, maybe I did, but and it's about more for me, looking back, it's about, and then what comes of that whole journey and the just what's happened because of this, which, gosh, you know, nothing like that would have, and the things that I've done since would have happened if I hadn't have done it, whether I'd have won or whatever. And then I went on to, you know, do the Ashes, and the tables were turned. So, and definitely no sour grapes at all.
Kerryn on the balance beam, a little hesitant there, but determined to beat Eunice on this eliminator. Here comes Eunice, and now only a travelator stands between Kerryn and that motorcycle first prize as she pumps up the travelator for the Ashes title. She's taking her time, but she gets up there. She's done it. A great eliminator for Kerryn. In fact, a great show. Swings through and shatters her personal best time over this course. John Anderson urging Eunice to take on the travelator. He certainly frightened me up there. Eunice sprints to the top. A great character with a great future. Her first ever defeat on Gladiators in a final. Eunice swings home, this time a runner-up. And the Aussie crowd acknowledge these two great British sportswomen.
Congratulations, you are a winner of our Gladiators final! Well done, Kerryn. And here is a beautiful trophy to go with it. And what a bike, it's all yours, eh?
Unbelievable, absolutely speechless.
You know, me and Eunice were great friends and great competitors and great rivals. You know, probably termed as nemesis. I don't see, because nemesis probably has negative connotations. I would probably say that we really respected each other. We were great friends, but we were competitive in very, very different ways and really respected each other.
I went out for a meal last night with Kerryn. We were just chilling out together. And to sum Kerryn up, if she wins tonight, it'll be, this has been the best thing I've ever done in the Gladiators is great. And if she gets beat, it'll be, this is the best thing I've done in the Gladiators is great. Because all she does is smile. She's so happy, so jovial all the time. She's relaxed me. We went for a meal and I was the tense one, to be honest. And she was just chilling me down all the time. So one thing I can definitely say, if I get beat tonight off Kerryn, I'll be beat by probably the best competitor there. There's been nobody like through my half or through her half, I think that could have beat each of us. So that's one thing I can definitely hold my head up and say, if I do get beat. Oh, and Kerryn, you owe me a £5, so if you do win, I owe me £5 back.
What was your relationship like with Eunice, and did you ever get that £5, or did you owe her? What happened there?
Yeah, well, no, we were genuine good friends. We actually supported each other. We went through the games together and worked out tactics, because really in our minds it was us versus the Gladiators. It wasn't really me versus Eunice or contender versus contender. It versus the Gladiators for the majority of the show. And then at the end was the only time that you competed against contender versus contender. And that was, let's be honest, it was an assault course, which you just had to do your best. And if you did your best and if you did really well, then good on you. And if you fell, oh well, you know, that's a shame, but you know, that was your doing. You were in control of your own destiny in a way, so you couldn't blame the other contender.
I'm sensing there's a story there though, Kerryn. Will you have a bet on which gladiator you could beat on something? Was there anything like that going on?
Well, no, we'd look at that sheet when we were in. I remember having a conversation with Eunice and going, yeah, we'll win that one. We'll win that. Oh, we got no chance. Oh, we're going to struggle on that one. Because we could see which gladiator we were. I'm not going to go into who was who, but we could see, we kind of got the essence of the gladiators. We knew where their strengths were, but likewise, we knew where the weaknesses were. And we knew where, you know, some of the gladiators, they're really, genuinely, you know, really, really lovely. And you got an impression that some of them were a bit wary about wanting to hurt you. So I think they back a little bit. Some of them just absolutely back. There was no holding back. And if you happened to be on the end of their pugil stick or gauntlet things or whatever, you know, it was fair game. And I think that happened more in the men, if I'm honest with you, than the women.
So moving on from that Series 3, and in 1995, is it true that you competed again as a contender in Sheffield against Series 4 contender Tracy Fulthorpe?
I was super sub in Sheffield, so I was on my next round of university holidays. So that was my summer job, if you like. I was a substitute for any contender in that series of live events who got injured, and there was a lot of injuries. I think I probably got chucked on, and I literally got chucked on halfway through a show when somebody got injured or stretchered off or whatever and couldn't carry on. Probably about 4 or 5 times. And each time I'd obviously then do the eliminator each time and win. So I'd be giving this trophy across to this injured person who didn't get through it. So I suppose the other contender who wasn't injured might have felt a bit aggrieved by that.
See, I just wondered because normally the producers use it as to test out new contenders for the upcoming series, but I'm now starting to think, was it perhaps a warm-up for the Ashes series?
Do you know what? I hadn't even thought about it. Maybe it was. Yeah, hadn't thought about that at all. I just thought that they needed someone to come on as a sub when someone get injured, that they didn't have to retrain. That had already been through it, so possibly.
And Kerryn, like Eunice at this point had been kind of converted into Gladiator Blaze from her success on the series, on 94 series. How did you feel about her being a gladiator? Did you ever have to face her as Blaze? What was that experience like when seeing her as a gladiator?
I definitely didn't face her as Blaze. That was just probably her destiny. It was her personality that was very different to mine, that was, made the producers choose her. Like, that's what I wouldn't have wanted to do that.
Oh, really? That was going to be my next question, was would you have wanted to have been a gladiator if they had asked you, and what your name would have been if you had taken on that mantle?
I don't think it suits my, when you talk about being thrust into the spotlight and the fame, I'm probably a little bit uncomfortable with it. I am naturally a bit uncomfortable with the whole celebrity way of, and also all media, television, film industry probably just doesn't sit as well with me, because I just find it a little bit hard to just the genuineness of the whole. It's not real.
But then, of course, Kerryn, 1995, along with Eunice and a small team of gladiators, you went over to Australia in the Ashes, 3-part special. How did that feel to represent your country?
Oh, amazing. That was, again, another surreal. I remember getting a phone call from one of the assistant producers and, just saying, would you go out to Australia and do the Ashes? I'd never been to Australia. I was still fairly young. It was in my next summer holidays from university, and was like, oh gosh, yeah, why not? And it was just the next stage of the whole Gladiators adventure, going out probably as a party with the Gladiators as well, because in the shows you kept very separate. So you get to know more of the Gladiators more, and then when you're out doing the shows in Australia, obviously you're only against the Australian Gladiators. So this was the only time, the time that we were cheering for the British Gladiators to do a really great job, because that's going to do us a favour, because obviously they're pitted against our opponents, essentially. So the dynamics changed a little bit, which was really interesting, but great. And everyone got to know people as individual people, rather than their personas, and had a great time. That the guys that went out there, the gladiators and the contenders were just brilliant. It was like being on a bit of a busman's or work holiday. We had a lot of downtime, and gosh, we got treated so well. The time when you're in the arena and the Australians are booing you and I think we're throwing batteries and coins at you at some point.
I can't remember that. That's brilliant. But stay on Australia for a moment, Kerryn, because I was thinking about this earlier, and we were talking about it. To remember Delta, she was the equivalent Jet type character, yeah. and it was one of those incredible experiences where you could almost feel like this has to be a holiday. It's so good, the hospitality, everything is so good, but we were there to work. And you guys were great, and we actually, as you said, you then sided with us because of course we had to be really good against the Australian contenders. And that Harley Davidson, which I think I went on to drop at some point because I was messing around.
You did, yes, you did.
You keep the bike.
Do you know, the only time I got on that bike was Hunter was driving it and I was on the back. And it was in the arena. I didn't know how to drive a gossip motorbike, let alone one that Harley. And just after I was the only contender, the only person who went out to Australia with a backpack. So I then went off backpacking. Everyone went home. You flew off home, and I extended my flight for a month and went backpacking in hostels. So I clearly couldn't, And with the bike, actually, there's an interesting story in that when I got home, someone contacted me and said, so the bike, the Australians refused to send it across because it cost too much in import taxes. So they were never going to give a British winner the bike anyway. And then they went, they've decided to give you the value of the bike as to what the value was in Australia. And I was like, yeah, that's fine. I can't be riding a massive motorbike around the streets of Leeds as a university student, just be ridiculous. So it was always my intention to, sell it or whatever. But they had no intention of sending it across anyway. And then when they sent the money across, obviously you look at, okay, what's it worth? Because the Australian dollar was so weak against the pound at the time, I got like a third of what it was actually, what I could have got it for. So it was a bit of a swizz, but you know what? It is what it is.
As you know, I own a Harley Davidson, which is like a dream come true bike. At the moment, I think it's somewhere in the middle of the Atlantic being shipped across. So when I do get out, I'm going to be roaring around the streets. So watch out, 'cause if you see a mad chick on a motorbike, it's probably me.
That final 7.5 second head start, you got your revenge. It was a replay of the 94 final and you won. That must have felt good.
Yeah, it was absolutely. And I remember looking at you. I remember just before we go out looking at you and going, right, what should we do here then? And she went, we just go for it. Because and I don't know whether I felt a little bit, I don't know, maybe I felt a little bit guilty because she's such a good friend. And there was an inkling going, we just go through the thing together. And it was just me. And Eunice was like, why would you even think something like that? As she's very, very competitive and absolute. I was going, yeah, you're right. We'll just go, we'll do it as fast as we can, right, last time. And it was just heads down, jump over this, get on with the job and do it as quickly as you can. And that's what I did.
They must have really liked you at Gladiators HQ because then you returned again, didn't you, for the Battle of the Champions to compete alongside Eunice and the Australian champion Bernie Withers. Is that right, Paul?
Yeah, that's right. It was a charity special. Everybody in the audience paid £5, where normally the tickets were free. And yeah, it was 3 champion contenders, 3 women, 3 men. Yeah, it was a Christmas special, I think it was.
I don't think I did that. I can't remember doing that.
Yeah, it was one where you kind of 3 contenders and you competed against the Gladiators as normal. And then after 4 events, they lost the lowest scoring contender out of the show, which was unfortunately was you, Kerryn. And then Eunice and Bernie kind of continued on to do the last event and then the eliminator, with Eunice winning that show.
Kerryn and Vogue just up there really for the workout. Even with a 10-point knockout, Kerryn won't score enough to make the cut to continue to the next stages of the competition. Kerryn swinging as best as she can, but Vogue knows her reputation is always on the line and will give no quarter. Kerryn has done well to withstand everything Vogue's thrown at her and picks up her 5 points. The Ashes champion Kerryn Sampey gave her best.
Well, Kerryn, it was quite a good fight. You looked a little bit vulnerable on a couple of occasions.
Yeah, in the end, I got a couple right round the head, which was good, but good fight.
You picked up 5 points, but I'm afraid those 5 points are really not enough to take you into the next round. What happens at this stage is we have to, unfortunately, say goodbye to our lowest scoring contender. And I'm afraid the 5 points brings you up to 18 points, and the other 2 girls are on 30. So I'm afraid I'm very reluctant to let you go because you're a good fighter, and it's been great to have you on the show. But can everybody just give a warm round of applause for Kerryn? She's put on a great fight tonight.
I have no recollection of that whatsoever. I'm certain that. Was that
Yeah, it was in the 4th series, 95. So that was the last time that you kind of appeared before the final ever series. Yeah, it was just a one-off special that they did.
Because the only one I do remember is the one, I don't think they called it Champion of Champions one, which one that I got injured in.
Yeah, the Supreme Champion. Yeah, that was the last ever series. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember it. I don't have no recollection.
I just suspect you just keep coming back so much that it all won't blow into one. Because you came back to the show each year, didn't you, to work as a sports masseuse, didn't you?
It's funny actually. After the first one, once I'd finished university and I got my degree, I then trained as a sports therapist, and it was because of the treatment that I'd received at doing the shows. Because after each of the shows, you're just like everything is locked up. You are literally battered, and you know that in a day or 2 days you've got another show to do, and just walking or moving or anything, it's really painful. So, and it's just muscle soreness, that's all, which actually sports therapy, I think, was a real contributor to getting me up and ready for the next one, because the fact was that if at any point you got injured, you were out. You know, it didn't matter how good you are, if you got an injury, that was it, game over. So, yeah, it was just about preventing injuries from happening, but also maintaining so you could feel that you actually had, that muscle soreness that you get is, sorted out before the next one.
So let me get this right. Because I'd left by this point, Kerryn, and so you came back and were working behind the scenes for the show. And you're still having a little bit of a thirst and an appetite to get back in the Leica and compete in the arena again.
No, I was quite happy, more than happy where I was.
Okay.
It was a really familiar surroundings for me. I remember, treating and working with the sports therapy and the physio teams, on people, but really understanding where they were at and how they were chat to people as going through. So I was a bit of a friend really who'd gone through the same thing that could empathise with.
Helping coach them psychologically, I bet, as well.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, and I remember, the celebrity ones that they did. I remember, I think it was Willie Carson on my couch, and he just looked like a little person because I'd never treated you, and I was like, God, this is really easy. And then you get a massive beefcake coming on. You knew that was just going to be, to get through all that muscle. As a sports therapist, your hands were going to start hurting. So, it was from sort of sublime to ridiculous, really, as to who you got coming through on your treatment couch.
So let's go to the Supreme Champion then. You returned, you facing the 98 Gladiators champ, Jane Smith. How was that coming back to it again then, and donning the Lycra again to come back for that Series 8?
Harder because at that time I was working, so I wasn't a student who was training gymnastics all the time. I was still coaching gymnastics and all of that. So yeah, I wasn't as prepared, and I think I wasn't as strong. I wasn't probably as quick.
Well, you got injured, didn't you, in a Powerball against Vogue?
Yeah, my shoulder came out the socket and went back in again. I had a sprung shoulder.
Well, Kerryn, we did say in Powerball that you were hurt. What's exactly happened?
Just in my joint, I think it just popped out and then popped back in again.
And I really don't know what to say, because you've done one event, which is almost such a false start. You get worked up and you've been motivating yourself for this. You get in and it's over so quickly.
Yeah, well, 30-second comeback kid, it happens. But good luck to Janet. I hope you can carry on, but all the best.
We'll still see you around, because you'll hang around for the rest of the show, won't you?
Yeah, that'd be great, thanks.
And it's still not as strong as it was. And that's the thing around injuries. I think that probably I wasn't as well conditioned as I was. And Jane was absolutely awesome. She was absolutely one of the best in what she did and how she did it.
And you had to leave that competition, didn't you? Crying, but still smiling.
And I remember I had to go back into the arena, and then I think it was Falcon just came up to me and hugged me and then squeezed on his shoulder.
So after giving so much of yourself work-wise and sort of as a contender as well, to give so much of your time in the 90s, what were your thoughts about it all coming to an end? Was it the right time, do you think?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, definitely. It wasn't something that I hankered after or anything like that. I just think it was this was amazing. It was amazing to be a part of it, amazing to be immersed in it. But for me also, for me personally, there was a shelf life about it. And again, it was a bubble. It was a complete bubble. It wasn't real life. And I think I probably got more of a realistic feet on the ground opinion about the whole thing. But I really appreciated it for what it was. But at the same time, I wasn't, really upset or, I wasn't really involved and immersed in that, because I think I had the understanding that it wasn't a real life thing.
I like that perspective. If you could put your finger on one of the most memorable moment for you, what would it be?
Oh my goodness. I think do you mean in the shows or since?
Oh, well, there's two answers there. Let's stick with the show for now.
Just the enormity of the absolute love and enthusiasm that people had for it. And it was genuine. People just absolutely loved it. I didn't meet single person who sort of said, oh, that Gladiators, it's a load of rubbish and a waste of time. It was every single person from really, really young to really, really old had some sort of love of it, I think, because it was really inoffensive, because it was really just about joy and celebrating and and being active. And, you know, there wasn't any, I suppose, negativity around it at all. It was just a real celebration of joy, I think. And to be part of that, gosh, what a treat to be a part of that and to be immersed and involved in that. So I think that was it as the whole package, really. The people that I met, the friends that I made, all of that sort of thing was great. And for me, just being a big kid, playing on bits of equipment and running around, and gosh, that's my absolute love. And so grateful that I had the opportunity to do that.
And it's all about the travelator. And Kerryn doing exactly what she said she would, pumping those arms and straight into the quarterfinals.
Kerryn, that really was spectacular, and a little clap of the hands there just before you went up on the travelator.
Yeah, so pleased, I just can't believe it. Just went through it.
Norcan, about 1,000 other people who've come along to support you here this evening.
They've been absolutely brilliant, really spurred me on.
Looking forward to the quarters?
Yeah, very much so, yeah.
I look forward to seeing you there.
The Gladiators came back in 2008 on Sky One for a revival series. I don't know if you managed to see any of that or what you thought of it. Did you see any of it on Sky?
Not massively. However, I do remember going down to Wembley. I think it's the studios in Wembley. And me and Roddy, do you remember Roddy? He was brilliant.
Roddy, yeah.
And it was Andrew Norgate, and me and Roddy were these crash test dummies. We were asked to be these sort of crash test dummies for that show, in that we had to try out some of the games, and you ended up going into water instead of onto mats. And we were basically, right, Kerryn, get on that, see how you can do that. And they were just, you know, all the mechanics of it, I think. But I remember that, but the water that you splashed down into was absolutely freezing cold. So me and Roddy were there just getting wet through. And
were you tempted to kind of compete again? Did you want to get the lycra back on? And
no, I didn't want to go anywhere near that freezing cold water again. But yeah, and it was different, you know, and I do think that there is something about not being, there's something a bit, I didn't want to be that old has-been, being a little bit desperate to resurrect some sort of nostalgia. It's not a good look. It might make great telly, but that I wasn't going to be that sort of telly. I have a good, I think, sort of sense of self-awareness. They go, no, actually, we'll leave it to someone else, someone younger, someone, you know, someone else. It didn't even figure in my my thoughts I could do that. You know, I do get friends telling me that I should, and I am very self-aware to know my limitations now, that that's in the past, and it was lovely, but no.
Paul, what was it like as for you, you know, super fan Paul Noddings, watching Kerryn throughout the multiple appearances, but what was it about her that you thought that she did really well? What was it about that really stood out?
Oh, I think it was, like I say, as you were known, like the smiler, it was the fact that you were just having the time of your life. You didn't take it too seriously, but you were just really good at what you did. I think you touched on, like you say, with the events, you weren't amazing in all of them. Some of them you had really good luck, but that made really good TV as well. And I think that's the thing, that when you were on the games, you never knew how it was going to work out, whether you were going to win, whether you were going to lose. Even with the eliminator, it was like, if you were in front, were you going to win still? Or if you were behind chasing, you still were in with a chance because you were so good on the eliminator. So I think, as a fan of Gladiators, seeing you compete as many times as you did, which I think was about 10 times in total, it was just really exciting because you just never knew what was going to happen. And I think with Gladiators, that's what you always wanted. If you could predict what was going to happen too much, it wasn't exciting anymore. So you had that unpredictable kind of element to you, which I think the fans just loved. And you were just having the time of your life, really.
I was playing, absolutely.
What do you think today, then, as we're gearing up towards the 30th anniversary, should Gladiators return now?
Oh, goodness. Yeah, why not? I think it's I think there's something about nostalgia, and I think look, if I'm mentioning Gladiators to anyone under the age of 20, 25, they don't really know what I'm talking about. My son has no idea what this is all about. And wouldn't it be great for the next generation to be involved, you know, in this, in the way that it's done, because there's something really wholesome about it. You know, it's on TV. It's great competition and a bit of fantasy in there as well. So absolutely, I think that's, why not?
Yeah, and I think that encapsulates a lot of your feeling, and for many of us as well, producers, glads and contenders, and everybody involved in the show, and the viewers. wholesome it was in those halcyon days of wholesomeness Saturday night TV. So before we leave you, and thank you for spending time with us, we'll come back to you again. But briefly, what are you doing now? What fills your days and weeks up?
Goodness. Well, yeah, so at the moment, I'm a director of an organisation that enables people to be more physically active who are maybe less able to be physically active. So those with disabilities, those with, maybe more socioeconomic challenges, long-term conditions, that sort of thing. That's where I've got to. That's my love, to work with a purpose, with Macmillan Cancer Support since, and then I've worked with organisations like the YMCA. So certainly in that third charitable sector, but absolutely with that link to being active, because gosh, that's what I've done. That's always what I've done. I'm a massive advocate of it. And so enabling others who maybe find it a little bit more difficult, but would really benefit from it. That's what I'm involved with.
I absolutely love that. And do any of them recognise you from those days?
I think some do. Some sort of look at you a bit weird and are convinced that they know you. Maybe, it's the voice or the laugh or the something is going, something. And I don't say anything. And I've got a different surname now. So there's not that natural link over there. I've been contacted on Twitter by 25-year-old girls who've told me, my name's Kerryn and I've been named because you were on Gladiators and my parents quite liked your name. If nothing else, there's more people in the world called Kerryn.
Kerryn, from all of us at GladPod here, thank you so, so much, and do come back and visit us again.
It's been lovely walking down memory lane. I genuinely, until I got contacted, I genuinely forgot all about a lot of this stuff, and I had to dredge it out my memory banks. But it's been an absolute joy. Thank you very much.
So there we go. Another series, another champion contender. Kerryn this time. Loved that chat with her. The thing that I took away from that is just her constant belief and attitude of give it a go. And she mentioned that a few times on the show. But for me, I wasn't aware of this. You brought it up, Paul. Travelator controversy. I need to get to the bottom of this, because it does sound like, from what she was saying, that in the earlier rounds the Travelator was easy to glide up, and then when it got to the epic final eliminator with Eunice, that suddenly the eliminator was just like Everest to try and get up.
Yeah, I was casting my mind back, and I must admit I do remember that there was crew and production around the Travelator, and you could see it when they were getting it ready and set up. It did have variable speeds of it, but I think that the most, obviously it was a TV show, so when you're getting nearer to the finals, where we've kind of discussed in the past where they'd put certain gladiators on their more specialist events as the competition went on, I think it's probably safe to say that they probably did speed the Travelator up, because obviously there were a better bunch of contenders. It was a TV show, they wanted to make it more exciting, so I would say that they probably did speed it up the further you got in the competition. But what I would say is that if they did speed up one side of the Travelator, the other side was equal speed, so it was never that one was faster than the other. But I think that it's safe to say they did speed it up as the finals kind of got closer.
And Di, I have to say that speaking to Kerryn, the thing that I took away was that how relaxed she was about the competition. She seemed like the most competitive person, but actually it was all about giving it a go, trying her best, and also that friendship with Eunice, and just, being happy for her to win. No sour grapes. I was taken aback by that. What was your kind of reaction to that from when she was talking about it?
Just trying to key into someone like Kerryn's personality. She was very comfortable with the athlete that she is. She'd worked hard to become as good as she was, and particularly to become contender champion. At that stage, she felt almost relaxed enough, but it could have been a double bluff for us, because I get the feeling she's quite introverted in parts of her personality. So what happens there, they become very skilled at sort of putting on a very relaxed demeanor, or very calm, so it could be a double bluff, because she literally, as Eunice would often say, as the eye of the tiger is what it takes to win type of thing. And I'll never forget Eunice saying that fight, never be beguiled by any of these things that we pick up on, because she was there right at the very end with that fight, and very skilled at doing it. Whether she's conscious she does it or not, I can relate to it as well. But that's what I take from Kerryn. Absolutely lovely.
And I think, Paul, we discussed on that podcast just about about the hang tough rig and how in Australia it was a different setup, which kind of threw the UK Glads and Contenders. But one thing that we didn't discuss was that was basically why Lightning lost for the one and only time, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was Lightning's only defeat on the rings, and I think it was a combination of that the rings were laid out in a different way, and perhaps Di, you can talk to this more, but I think the rings were also, if I remember rightly, they were like wooden rings and not the metal rings that the UK series had. So, and I think that, as well as a lack of practice time and the fact that the setup was so different, was, sadly Lightning's only defeat to an Australian contender, which was, such a shame, but at least it didn't happen in the UK arena.
Do you know what though, Kim, Lightning, she just laughed. She was like, bit different up there. And I remember going on it, and the matrix of the rig that the rings are actually suspended from was like completely aligned, whereas our rig was all on a slight offset. So you could traverse, you could do lots of other things, whereas theirs was slightly different and meant it was much more difficult to negotiate yourself around that set of rings. But I love the way that Kim Lightning just laughed it off, because she was just such an easygoing athlete, fierce inside like all her contenders. But I remember that she's like, oh well, it is what it is. There's nothing we could do to change it. So yeah, I do remember that. I was sort of slightly in fear every time they'd bring the sets out of what event you're going to be on and against who. I'd be going, oh, I don't want to be on hang tough on this one, I really don't. But I did in the end have to. But yeah, bit nerve-wracking when you get so used to how we did it in the UK. But again, I suppose in life we've got to learn to be a little bit flexible and adjust to different situations.
Yeah, no, it is. And I thought it was funny yet again, when we're talking about the audition, how the struggle's still real for people on the treadmill. Like we had Weininger in the last series talking about how he just took it so easy because he didn't realise you could speed it up, and he thought he was absolutely smashing it out the park. Same with this one. So my thinking, Di, for you was, were treadmills really a thing back in the early 1990s? Like, how come people just didn't really seem to understand the mechanics of what a treadmill is?
Do you know, I don't think of course I've trained on a treadmill in the gym because it's got the suspension on it is better than running on concrete on the road. I know that biomechanically it's a bit safer for joint sets and people of certain ages to use treadmills. But back then, they may not have even been as advanced as they are today. But one thing for sure, a treadmill can go fast or slow, guys. Think about it. And, if you're competing for something where you've got to sustain a certain speed for a period of time, you've got to be ready for it. But again, it depends who's operating it. There could have been all sorts going on there for him, bless him.
I just wanted to pick up on the friendship with Eunice, because I think even though it was such a competitive environment and obviously they were in the finals together, the friendship between the two of them, because they were pitched against each other so often, like not only in the 94 finals, but then in international competitions and the Ashes, where Kerryn actually managed to beat Eunice in that show. I just think it was such a positive competitiveness between the two of them, and I think that's really rare and so wholesome of the Gladiators show, that was shown that you can be competitive and want to beat the other person, but they actually had such a genuine friendship between the two of them. It was just something really lovely, I think, and I think that just came across on screen as well.
Thinking back on that memory of the two of them, something Eunice and I would talk about backstage, and I've used it when talking about particularly one of the other gladiators, Mark Smith, Rhino, a sense of grace, gratitude. She's like, hey, Diane, I can't believe I'm here. Sorry, it's a really bad impersonation using. I'm like, you probably don't speak like that in any way. She was effervescent with being humble and full of gratitude. And I think Kerryn probably really matched her with that, but just wasn't quite as verbose, quite as verbal about expressing it. And there was a genuine kind, you could see sort of the dazzle, particularly in Eunice's eyes, about, I'm here, I can't believe it. She'd be looking around the arena, and it was a fabulous place for her to show her athletic, amazing ability and spirit.
Thanks, Di. Thanks, Paul. That's it for another week on the GladPod. As always, if you want to get in touch, it's gladpod@gladiatorstv.com. That's the email address you're going to need. Don't forget, you can also send us a message on Instagram and Twitter, and please like our page on Facebook.
Good competition, good spirit, great sportsmanship as both contenders show mutual respect. Join us again next week for the ultimate challenge, the might of